Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Patrick Hall. I'm the Mayor of the City of Canning. It's a pleasure to welcome you all here today. It's always lovely to see so many faces, especially new ones, in the public gallery. Today is Tuesday, the 18th of March 2025, as we move into the ordinary council meeting for this evening. As far as declarations go, I declare the meeting open. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land. We also pay our respects to elders both past and present. Now, just to start, can I ask everybody here to please turn off your mobile phones so they're not ringing during the meeting. So if you can please turn them off, I'd be very appreciative. Just to let you know, this meeting is actually being live streamed to the public via the city's YouTube channel. And council meetings are public meetings, and any information you provide will be recorded and may be publicly accessible. The council chambers are not a parliament, and parliamentary privilege does not apply. Elected members and staff risk being held personally liable if their comments are found to be defamatory or breach any duty of confidentiality. And statements made during council meetings are solely those of the person making them. Nothing expressed at a council meeting can be attributed to the city unless it is adopted by a resolution of council. Elected members and employees must disclose any financial, proximity or partiality interest they have in an item on the agenda and declare the interest at the commencement of the meeting or at the very latest when the item is about to be discussed. And financial proximity and impartiality interests are to be disclosed in accordance with the Local Government Act. Elected members who do disclose a financial or proximity interest must not participate in that part of the briefing or meeting relating to their interest and must leave the meeting for the duration of the item. The confirmed minutes of a council meeting are the official record of that council meeting. Verbatim minutes are not required. Nevertheless, the city does publish a full recording of the meeting. And recordings of meetings must not be copied, republished or reproduced without the express permission of the City of Canning. As far as apologies go this evening, we have received apologies from Councillor Tuchek and also Councillor Hearn for tonight's meeting. At item 2.2, approved leave of absence, Councillor Singh is on an approved leave of absence, which has extended from the 10th of December back in 2024 to the 22nd of April in 2025. CEO, at item 3, disclosures of interest. Have we received any disclosures from any elected member in relation to tonight's agenda?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've received no declarations of interest for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4, announcements by the presiding member. There are none. Reports of delegates without discussion. Do any elected members have a delegates report they wish to table tonight? None, thank you. Question time for the public. There is a response here to a previous question taken on notice. That was taken at the agenda briefing last week on behalf of Mr Lawrence Money, and the full answer to that question will be published in the minutes of this meeting. Questions from the public. I'm going to open public question time in just a moment. The time set aside for public questions is 15 minutes, which may be extended if necessary. For recording purposes, I'll ask you if you're asking a question to step up to the microphone there. The staff will actually turn on the microphone from down here, so you don't have to worry about that. I'll get you just to state your name and address and introduce yourself to the council and then ask your question. Now, if questions can't be answered tonight, and sometimes they can't, we'll use a term called we'll take them on notice, which means we'll go away, get an answer for you, put that in writing and make sure it's published in the minutes. In accordance with policy AD02, members of the public who have registered their questions with the city's administration shall be called upon in the order in which registrations were received, and written questions will precede verbal questions. Now, if I need to extend that 15 minutes, I will, and if I need to extend it further, I'll ask council to consider that, and we will give that our due consideration. The city has received a number of questions for tonight's meeting, the first of which is from Mr Stephen Johnston. Good evening.
Good evening. Stephen Johnston, 13 Delphi Court, Rossmoyne. A couple of questions. At the ACM on the 20th of February last year, after the council rejected a Willerton resident's request for removal of a verge tree that was not supported by any evidence, Mr Mayor, at the suggestion of Councillor Singh, you requested the CEO to consider what controls might be put in place to determine which of these sorts of matters should come before the full council and by implication which should be left to the determination of council officers. So just sort of personal clarificatory questions. What progress has been made over the last 13 months in the development of those controls? And I wasn't sure, will they be made available to the council and to the public, or are they internal guidelines for the administration's guidance?
Thank you. Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The controls aim to ensure that street tree removal requests were dealt with at an administrative level and included a tree retention hierarchy and a documented flowchart that sees requests escalated through to the Director and to the CEO, and not necessarily to council, as was the previous case. These controls were included in the amended policy, policy ET 525, and that policy was adopted by council in May 2024.
Right, thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Just your second question, Steve?
Yeah, second question is, at the OCM on the 23rd of July last year, Council agreed to the following motion. Prepare a draft policy that provides the appropriate guidance around reimbursement of annual public liability and volunteer insurance premiums for Canning Incorporated environmental volunteer groups, and this policy be presented to a strategic information briefing in August 2024, prior to it being presented for consideration by Council at the September Ordinary Council meeting. As the three groups have recently paid or are about to pay their insurance premiums for the next 12 months and will be forwarding them to the City for reimbursement, I was wondering what progress has been made on the development of this policy and when can we expect to see a draft presented for consideration by Council?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In September 2024, Council deferred consideration of the policy and requested that the partnership agreements be drafted and entered into between the City and the volunteer environmental groups. Those relevant documents, such as the Environmental Volunteer Group Manual and the partnership agreements, have been drafted and are expected to be finalised in consultation with the various groups over the coming months. Following this, the policy will be represented to Council for consideration.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
The second question received is from Lyn Tan. I don't think Lyn's in attendance. Lyn, are you here? I'll just read the questions. I don't propose to read the answers, only because they're quite lengthy. We'll just publish those in the meeting. We'll write to Ms Tan so that she has an answer to these questions. She asked the first question, just to paraphrase, was in relation to warden shortages at schools and impacting children using the crossing at Varland Avenue and Corinthian Road. And she just asked the question, what's the purpose of installing the flashing lights at the crossing on Varland Avenue if motorists don't reduce their speed and stop to allow children across? So it was a question that is pretty open-ended, but we will answer it in writing and provide that answer to her. The second question, can the council negotiate with the Children's Unit, WA Police, to redeploy traffic wardens within the City of Canning of reduced traffic to assist the crossing on the dual carriageway of Varland Avenue, which is very prone to car accidents. And again, we'll publish the lengthy response to that in full and in writing, and we'll make sure that's brought to the attention of Ms Tan. Karin Kralupper of Queen's Park, are you here? Hello, Karin. How are you? Thanks for coming along. Would you just to say hello to Council and please ask your questions?
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
My name is Karin Kralupper. I'm a long-standing resident of Queen's Park. I think it's probably one of the longest-standing one. Can you please provide feedback on why the walls on both sides of the Queen's Park train station are painted in a horrible black? The black coverage absorbs a lot of heat in our increasingly hotter climate, when we actually should try to avoid dark colours for roofs, walls, etc.
Hard to disagree with that. Director Bowe. Oh, Director Bride. Director Bride.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The elevated rail project and the associated construction of the new Queen's Park train station is a state government project, and inquiries in relation to this project and why the metal was black should be directed to Metronet. Notwithstanding this, the design of the Queen's Park train station does include a mix of materials along its facade, including a substantial amount of glass and brick components, in addition to the dark metal sheeting which provides visual interest.
We don't have any responsibility over that, some state government project, but I appreciate your question. Just your second question?
Yeah, okay. Regarding the new road layout along Wharf Street, traffic does not run more smoothly since the removal of the train crossing. Coming from the northeast from Welshpool Road, along Wharf Street, approaching the lights at the intersection with Sevenoaks Street, most of the time the cars are banking up quite a distance. There is one line for straight ahead traffic, one right turn lane and a lonely arrow for cars waiting to turn left. There only needs to be one car at the red light wanting to go straight, blocking the majority of cars wanting to turn left. Why was not a left turn lane included in the plans? There is room for it.
Director Bride.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The upgrade to the Sevenoaks Street, Wharf Street signalised intersection is being undertaken by Metronet as part of the elevated rail project. The intersection has been designed to accommodate 2030 traffic volumes. The signage, pavement markings and traffic signal phasing have yet to be installed, which is contributing to the poor operation of the intersection. In addition to this, Wharf Street is attracting additional traffic due to the restricted traffic movements at the Hamilton Street and William Street intersections. In relation to the Wharf Street speed bumps on each side of the traffic signals, there is a requirement that the project installs measures to reduce the travel speed of motorists to 40 kilometres per hour, where the principal shared path crosses a road, and this treatment was considered the most suitable.
Thanks, Director. But just to clarify for me, can I just be honest with you? It's a matter of frustration for this council and the city to some respects. Just when people actually see those temporary arrows on the road or a multi-million-dollar road network project and it takes forever to get the arrows painted and it's chaos and we've got signs everywhere, the responsibility of that is with main roads. So even though the City of Canning owns the roads and they're called local roads, main roads won't allow anyone except for main roads to paint the road markings on the road. So we do our part. We actually build the roads and build the intersection and make those improvements. But we cannot improve the delivery of the things that finish those projects. And so we're just as frustrated as you are.
Am I allowed to say just something quick? I've been in touch with Metronet about the railway stations, and they told me I should get in touch with you because you have approved of.
You've done they've done the old handball and football parlance, but we don't have any responsible for that. It is a Metronet project, state government land, and it's a state government project that they've fully funded. So whilst we've had some oversight over it, I mean, we know what's going on and we've received briefings, but we don't have any responsibility for decision making. So I wish they hadn't have said that. Perhaps go back to them. And don't forget too, you can talk to your local member. Ron Sayer was elected to replace Bill Johnston. I'm sure he'd like to hear from you if you have an issue. He is the state government representative for your area. Perhaps drop him a line or go to his office in Castledare.
I know him well, yes, I will do it.
Terrific. Thanks for coming this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Claire Money from Riverton. Claire, are you here? Claire's not here. Again, I'll just paraphrase her questions, and they are quite lengthy responses, and I don't plan to read them out. Can you please explain why permanent signs have been placed at Riverton Oval for dogs to be on a leash prior to the end of the trial period? These signs have been up since early February. It implies that this consultation is just for show and that the council has already made up its mind, and makes a number of other comments there. But we will reply to Ms Money in writing, and we shall also make sure that the answer to that question is published in the minutes for this meeting. We have another question here from Sarika Jain of Riverton. Sarika, are you here? Not here. I'm a resident of Varland Avenue in Riverton. My concern is that we should have a traffic attendant on Varland Avenue after Corinthian Road turns onto Varland Avenue for school kids crossing. We do not have a crossing. We do have a crossing just at the corner of Varland and Corinthian. Kids tend to cross from there in the absence of traffic attendants. Still, cars don't slow down there. That's in the same vein as the earlier question. Again, there's a lengthy response to that I don't intend to read as Ms Jain is not actually here, so I will actually have that attended to. We'll publish it in full in the minutes. We do have a number of questions from those on the floor here. I have Margaret Adams. Margaret, hello, you're well known to the council. Would you like to step forward, please? You're from Ferndale. Introduce yourself.
Hi,
and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Margaret Adams from Ferndale, and I'm a traffic warden, so I can understand some of those questions.
Can you do something about Varland Avenue? It's obviously driving everyone insane.
Maybe I could just pop down there as well.
Would you? All right, thank you.
So I've really come to support the change of speed limit on High Road in Linwood and Parkwood, because anything that protects our young people is appreciated. Can I just ask if there are any changes suggested for the Manor crosswalk in Metcalfe Road? Could somebody please come down and have a chat with me, because I know more about it than most. And I wonder if any consideration has been given to the speed down near the Riverton shopping centre. At Coles in Hamilton Hill there's a fruit and veggie shop and vet and stuff like that. They've actually got a permanent 40k an hour sign flashing 24/7. And I think with the number of people that don't know how to drive coming in and out of Coles, that might be something.
We just
that
need
could be
your
looked at.
question there, Margaret. What was your question going to
The
be?
the question was, if consideration has been or could be given to having 40k per hour flashing lights at Riverton Foring Shopping Centre. And then I go on to say about Hamilton Hill. But anyway, and I'm very grateful that the safety fencing is to be given consideration. And thank you all, if I may. Thank you for all the work you're doing at the park on Wisteria Way.
Thank you. We don't hear that very often, so I very much appreciate that. And I think too, it wouldn't be on the realms of possibility that somebody might contact Margaret Adams. Thank you. Director Bow is committed to contact you at some stage to have a conversation about that. Thank you for coming. Tara, sorry, I don't understand the writing. Miaread? Hello, Tara, how are you? Would you like to introduce yourself to the council? You have a question in relation to playground and dogs at Bannister Creek.
Yeah, I just saw the signs earlier in the year in relation to Bannister Creek potentially becoming dogs on lead only, and I was just wondering if the council would be open to considering, if it's concerns about children's safety, to put a fence around the playground instead, so that it could remain off leash.
Director Bow?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We're happy to consider that, but council will make a decision in relation to the officer's recommendation. We aren't recommending that the entire Bannister Creek Park becomes on-leash or off-leash, and council will consider that later. But certainly we can take your comments on board regarding fencing the playground.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming along this evening. And the answer to that question, well, the deliberation, if you're not going to stay around tonight, and please feel free to leave, will be printed obviously in the agenda and published online, so you'll be able to see that fairly shortly. Does anybody else have a question from the floor? Thank you, Margaret. Goodbye.
Thank you. I'm going home to watch it on YouTube.
Good day. All right. Would you like us to wait for 15 minutes to give you time? All right, terrific. Okay, thanks for that. Before I close public question time, any other questions from the floor? Okay, thank you very much. Notice I didn't give you very much time to work up the courage. I'm going to close public question time now. It is just after 15:15. It's 18 minutes past 6 p.m. So thank you everyone who contributed to that. Item 7 on tonight's agenda is the confirmation of minutes, and that's the confirmation of minutes from the ordinary council meeting held back on the 18th of February 2025. The recommendation is on page 3 of tonight's agenda, and the recommendation also appears on screen. Councillors, can I have a mover for that item, please? Thank you, Councillor Secon, and a seconder is Councillor Rodriguez. Can I put that to the vote, please?
The motion to confirm the previous minutes has been carried unanimously with all 7 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. We move to item 8, the receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. At item 8.1, petitions, there are none. At item 8.2, presentations, there are similarly none. At item 3, deputations, a deputation has been approved for Dwayne Reid of Riverton regarding concerns over the Rivermoor Loop and Adenia Park pathway. Mr. Reid, please come forward. You have done so already. Thank you very much. I think we've got your deputation on the screen. You have up to 10 minutes to address the council, and I appreciate you coming along.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. I'm actually here on behalf of over 85 residents of Riverton, and which I am one of. And I suppose it's really as a result of, and I'll just really try and give you some quick context to start with, which is the first slide. if you can just zoom in on the first section. So effectively on Friday 25th of Jan, just before the long weekend, about a dozen of the households on Rivermoor Loop received a notification of works, if you just zoom a little bit more, which was due to start on the Wednesday, the 29th of January, and we received a letter on effectively the Friday the 25th, obviously long weekend, so we had one working day effectively to respond, even though that letter actually said we had time to respond by the 14th of February. However, we did effectively manage to get in contact with the appropriate person that was advised, which is Gerson. I'll go thank you, Mr. Bowe, for approving to stop work on the construction of the pathway, which was effectively, as the indication here, was due to sort of commence on the Wednesday. And in order to really have some consultation with the local residents that would be effectively directly impacted by that proposed pathway. If you can just zoom out, thanks, to the full slide. So there's been various conversations, so phone conversations, email, correspondence, and then also an on-site meeting on the, whichever day it is there, and an on-site meeting with Ryan and Gerson, which was very fruitful. And I suppose really that was our avenue to try and express some of our concerns and also alternative recommendation for particularly a more useful and also a safer pathway. So the slide, the image to the right, I'll expand on. If we can just go to the next slide, please. Sorry, to the next slide. Oh, that's me. I need to click a button somewhere. Okay, so this is probably the main one to talk to. So through those conversations, there's been two primary, I suppose, explanations or justifications that have been provided from the City of Canning. One being there's a state government initiative to interconnect pathways to make it easier for, and the words used were alternative modes of transport, which is bikes, wheelchairs, etc. And fundamentally, in principle, we fully agree with that. We fully support that. However, the solution that's been offered, which is, get that going, this bit of pathway down here, we feel is actually going to a very unsafe situation on Riley Road, which is that roundabout down there. And effectively, it's also not really interconnecting it. It's interconnecting pathways, but not to a facility. So our alternative proposal really gets down to effectively having, I suppose, really the same cost. We understand it's about $100,000 to build that bit of pathway here. Our recommendation, again on behalf of the 85 plus residents who live and use these roads and pathways, is to build a similar pathway up this other end of Rivermoor Loop, which then actually goes to a bus stop up here and then gives access to the local shops, affectionately known as Rustico in general for really good coffees, and also avoids a very unsafe roundabout. And the other factor involved in this is we do have local residents that are bound to effectively go for and similar. And so to actually get to those local shops, she's having to effectively go up here and around and back down again. So just make it easy for her in particular, but for all pedestrians to get to our local facilities. The other primary reason that has been provided is that effectively Riverton primary school students, to make it safer for them to walk to school. And I suppose I'm quoting here that the Riverton primary school asked for it. And an extract of an audit from 2021 was provided as the evidence for that. If you can just zoom in on this section here, please. Yep, thank you. And again, we agree we want to make it safer for the children, and my own kids went to Riverton Primary School. We have people who have signed, effectively, it's turned into somewhat a petition for the alternative. Sorry, if you can just keep it where it is there, thank you. That are current parents of children going to Riverton Primary School. They also have, they're the ones that actually pointed out that they actually provided feedback during that audit that they actually didn't want it at there. And there was even a comment of, this is a pathway to nowhere or a ramp to nowhere. And this is quoting from that very same audit report that they actually prefer Mercer Road, to cross at Mercer Road, but just make it safer. and to the point of even suggesting a zebra crossing to make it safer. And I appreciate that's a main roads responsibility. If you can just zoom back out, please. So fundamentally, we do agree that, yes, we want to make it safer. However, again, the proposed solution is actually the opposite of that. We honestly believe, and because we live and we drive through this intersection every day, we know it's a very unsafe intersection. And the other part, I suppose, is really that if you look at that particular pathway to the right here, it's all green. That is bushland, parkland, etc. There are no children walking from there through here. We actually had that on-site meeting deliberately at 8 a.m. through to 9 a.m. on a weekday. And at the end of that, we asked Gasson and Ryan, did you actually see any children walking up this road, which this pathway is supposed to help? There was zero, because we know that. Now, in the future, there may be a child, for sure. Again, our own children walk to Riverton Primary School, and we drove them, etc. The key is, and again, some of the feedback from Gerson in particular, was that the children are effectively coming from over this side, which is around Adenia to the right here. And so the most obvious and already been put in place is the pathway from Adenia up Mercer Road. And going back to the comments from the audit report is, please just make it safer. Okay, so we're very supportive of making it safe for all pedestrians, including Riverton Primary School. This is a very logical path to connect over. Also getting access to the library, the LeisurePlex, and then continuing on through to Riverton Primary School. Yep, next slide, please. Thank you. And so just some further supporting evidence, which again, this is all just through email correspondence, so we provided this already, but just to help brief the Mayor and the councillors, some examples, and we also, again, our on-site consultation with Ryan and Gasson was at this corner for part of it, just the last sort of 10 minutes worth, really to demonstrate that there is the curbing is all smashed up, there's the trucks and buses effectively overhang, and this is exactly where the proposed pathway is expected to cross over Riley Road. So it's a very dangerous situation, and all this smashing up of the curb and so forth is because cars and trucks drive quite fast through that intersection. And we provided a paper, and just if you can just zoom in on those words there, please. And sort of the key take-home message from that paper, which is a research on crossings at or near roundabouts. And the fundamentals of town planning is you never have a pedestrian crossing at a roundabout. It is the most unsafe location for a pedestrian crossing. In relation to that, the main reason is the cars entering a roundabout are looking sideways for the other vehicles entering to see whether they have to give way to them or not, okay? And therefore, they are distracted by the other cars and not looking for pedestrians. So it's actually the most dangerous place on a road for a pedestrian, aka a child going to school, to cross. So we strongly recommend that, I suppose, the take-home messages from this paper and town planners in general take that on board. So that's one of our evidence that we provided. Next slide, please. And the other part relating to the pathway which continues through to connect into the Adenia pathway is proposed to effectively cut through here. And if you just zoom in a little bit, you might be able to see there's this water tower here, which is great, and just there. And this tree here, I can just zoom back out again, thank you, is actually a roosting place for red-tailed black cockatoos, which is an endangered species, as you probably know. And this photo was taken just recently, around 4 p.m. They come into roost between 4 to 6 p.m, stay overnight and then leave in the morning. It's very nice to watch them. And they're obviously using the water tower. When we had the meeting here, we actually met right here, pointed this out to the appropriate people. The main response was, we'll move the water tower. I think the message got missed, that these are endangered species, red-tailed black cockatoos. We want to make sure they're not disturbed by putting a pathway and encouraging people to ride, scooter, whatever, through here and disturb them.
Sorry to interrupt you. Are you nearly finished, Mr. Reid? You've been going for 10 minutes. And
I've got the orange. I've got a minute, I believe, remaining.
Yeah,
So
I'll just
next
ask you to
slide.
wind up now if you don't mind.
Okay, no worries, will do.
Thank you.
Next slide, thank you. So we've got some images here of what we're suggesting is a much better pathway, including it's putting a pathway, like a concrete pathway, where there's already a dirt track because that's where people walk. Next slide, just to wrap up. So effectively we've provided this briefing to the Mayor and the councillors in the hope that you will support our recommendations and ensure that the preferred solution that we've outlined effectively is hopefully endorsed for a much safer and more useful pathway interconnecting the existing pathways.
Thank you very much for coming down. I've seen this previously. CEO, I'll just ask, can we have it distributed to the elected members tomorrow? I'll make sure that every elected member gets a copy of it so we can have a look at it when the matter comes up for a conversation. Thank you very much for coming down, Mr. Reid. And for those that were here to listen to Mr. Reid's deputation, please feel free, if you don't want to stay around for the rest of the meeting, we'll be here for a couple of hours, to please leave whenever you feel ready. Deputation has also been approved by, I've got Stephen Johnston here. Steve, you were here last week. You're making another deputation.
Oh, I'm always here.
You're not always here.
A repeat offender. Thanks very much. Look, I'm speaking in support tonight of the alternative recommendation in response to the first motion from the annual general meeting of electors for the protection of the high-quality Banksia woodlands threatened ecological community at 351 Bannister Road, Canning Vale. And it's quite extraordinary to think that that is 200 metres from the Roe Highway. That could be anywhere in Western Australia, but that gives an idea of the precious bushland at that site. The city's key environmental policy and strategic prescriptions over the last 10 years all emphasise the necessity of retaining and protecting the remaining natural environment consistent with a central tenet of Commonwealth and state government environmental legislation. To start with, in 2015, there was the city's local environmental strategy with its natural areas objective. Next slide, please. And that was to maintain, enhance and restore natural areas and protect biodiversity values. Very simple proposition. And in July 2018, Council endorsed the local biodiversity strategy with its top 3 objectives. Next slide, please. To increase the protection status of significant biodiversity in the city, including on local government managed or owned lands and on private land. To appropriately manage local natural areas to reduce threats to biodiversity and to increase the viability and resilience of natural areas by establishing buffers and ecological linkages. A year later, Council endorsed the sustainability policy with its 8 principal commitments, including one to protect the environmental integrity and biodiversity, with a very, very important acknowledgement that was echoed in the following year's land utilisation plan. Next slide, please. And that was to acknowledge that the city's unique biodiversity and ecological systems have intrinsic worth beyond their value as a community amenity or economic resource. Then in June 2022, Council endorsed the revised ET 520, Conservation of Locally Natural Fauna and Flora, next slide please, in which I particularly note the statement, the city will prioritise the retention, protection and extension of locally natural vegetation in parkland and other areas not managed for conservation, particularly if it is known to support locally natural fauna. Now, all those are fine words, but if they are not consistently applied in decision-making and management, then the city's credibility as an environmental steward will justifiably come under question. As you said yourself, Mr Mayor, the OCM on 20 February last year, as a council we need to be doing everything we can to support our staff, to support our position as a council and to support the policies we put in place so that people realise that once we have a policy position, it really means something. What council ultimately decides on the future of the Bannister Road bushland will be a major test of whether its environmental policies and strategies really do mean something. But it's not just the policy principles that should impel us to take the necessary protective action. It is consistency with the major commitments the city has made and is continuing to make in finance and other resources to fulfil the objectives of the urban forest, local biodiversity and local environmental management strategies, which are themselves key performance indicators in the city's strategic community plan. For instance, implementation of the local biodiversity strategy to achieve the goal of 10% native vegetation has included, according to real estate websites, the expenditure of more than $2 million by the city to purchase residentially zoned properties in Gerrard and Crawford Streets, East Cannington, to protect their 1.3 hectares of remnant vegetation. The city has also supported extensive revegetation initiatives of cleared land, and since 2020, in pursuit of the urban forest strategy objectives, has planted around 14,000 trees on verges and public open space. In all of that context, and when the city's natural environment has been so badly compromised that only around 7% of native vegetation was found to be remaining at the time of the local biodiversity strategy, the nearly 7 hectares of high-quality Banksia woodland at Bannister Road is an incredibly valuable conservation asset that has survived all these years by sheer luck. And every square metre of it needs to be protected. Indeed, as you said, Mr Mayor, again at that February OCM, we should be doing everything we can to protect the tree canopy we have. If the city, on the contrary, was to enable any of the Bannister bushland to be cleared, it would be undermining fulfilment of its strategic environmental objectives. The Land Utilisation Plan, adopted by Council in September 2020, revised in May 2023, includes a key principle and framework that are totally applicable to the Bannister Road bushland. Next slide, please. The first principle, and the key principle, is that while some of the outcomes of the plan may seek to generate revenue and financial returns from city land assets, it is also acknowledged that many land assets hold significant social, environmental and other non-financial value that contributes to the delivery of the city's strategic goals and service delivery. The principal value of the Bannister Road bushland site is indeed environmental and non-financial, notwithstanding the valuations that could have been taken at any time of its financial value, of its market value. And that points to the status quo action outlined in the Land Utilisation Plan of manage and maintain as the appropriate way forward, because the bushland meets all of the 3 criteria. Next slide, please. The first criterion is that the land asset is fulfilling its purpose and value. Putting aside its current archaic general industry zoning, 52 years old, which is quite inappropriate based on that zone's principal objectives specified in the city's land planning scheme, and recognising it for the environmental conservation function it has been fulfilling for decades, it is doing that brilliantly. It is a well-balanced, self-sustaining ecosystem that appears from aerial photographs to have largely avoided unnatural disturbance for at least the past 72 years, despite being surrounded by a tip site, a bus depot and a freeway. The second criterion is that the land asset is performing financially or economically. As far as we can determine, it has not required any maintenance and therefore incurred no costs for the city, and the lack of revenue attraction is well covered by the third and final criterion, that any financial or economic underperformance of the land asset is reasonably justified based on the condition and significance of social and or environmental values. The Land Utilisation Plan requires that disposal action, selling the property, quote, does not negatively impact social or environmental values. And the only likely disposal action that would meet that criterion is sale to the state government as an environmental offset. Certainly no sale to any private owner, unless they wanted to set up a conservation reserve, would meet that criterion. The manage and maintain option can sit alongside that disposal action, as the objective should be to have the bushland vested back to the city to manage, an arrangement the city already has in place at the Queen's Park Regional Open Space. In conclusion, councillors, I implore you, I encourage you to support the motion, the second motion before you tonight, or the second recommendation, not the original one, as a first step only, and there'll be a long way to go, towards protecting this precious natural remnant, of which that is a magnificent view. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Johnston. Deputation has been approved for Sharon Horgan of Linwood, speaking against Part 3 of the officer's recommendation for item IE 004 of 25, title of that report being the outcome of community consultation on on-leash proposal for 8 conservation parks. Ms Horgan, I understand you're on crutches. You're going to actually make your deputation sitting. I can see you sitting there with your microphone in front of you. Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Say hello to the council. You have up to 10 minutes to make your deputation.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Hello, my deputation is in relation to the current proposal to be considered for various parks for the community consultation on and off-leash proposals for various parks recommended. Now, in relation to paragraph 3, which is subject to part 2, the public consultation and the possibility of Woodford Park in Linwood becoming an off-leash park is set up as a possibility, subject to part 2. Now, my deputation is that this should not be approved, and the council should make sure that to retain Woodford Park as an on-leash park, because it has significant benefit to the community and is of great benefit. Now, my comments are that I believe that Woodford Park in Linwood is not a suitable on-leash, off-leash park. That basically this should not be approved because currently there are 4 existing dog exercise off-leash parks which are passive parkland in the sense they don't have active social clubs, etc. on them, causing conflict with use of space. Now, the Bannister Creek Park, of course, is currently being considered in part 2. Then, of course, in addition, there's also part of Edgware Park, part of Fleetwood Park, and, of course, Queensville Park. This is important because Queensville Park, which is Queensville Avenue and Finchley Street, is immediately and physically attached adjacent to Woodford Park. And it is an existing off-leash park. It is also passive parkland, provides extensive opportunities for off-leash views and consideration by dog owners and their dogs, off-leash. It physically attaches to Woodford Park. Now, Woodford Park is an active park which is used extensively by the community for different reasons. And I personally cannot see any reason or need for 2 physically attached close parks to be off-leash when one of them would, by its very nature, limit the use of it by the community use of Woodford Park. Oh, I'm sorry, pressing buttons. Now, Woodford Park, as set out in the current proposal in the paper attached for tonight's meeting, incorporates a broad range of sporting facilities, cricket pitches, nets, change rooms, kiosks, flood lighting, seasonal sports are played, cricket, soccer, other sports are quite possible, softball, the cricket pitch area, and also casually it's used by people outside of the social sporting clubs to play and practice sport on just spontaneously on the park. This is very important to develop skills if people want to join and become proper sports people. It's also used extensively by many groups and people in the community, particularly those surrounding and living next to Woodford Park. Obviously, first off, dogs on a leash. They happily live next to and enjoy the park with their dog owners while being next to other members of the community. Families, children's on the park, as well as, of course, in the playground itself, which is attached, and in the car parks, nearby roads, before and after school. This is very important. Fresh air, sunshine, get an opportunity, and they should be allowed to just walk across the park for exercise. The next one is quite important. The use of the Woodford Park by the elderly, disabled, to enjoy social contact, fresh air, sunshine, exercise. I really urge the council to consider this because the frail, the vulnerable, and the elderly may otherwise be stuck in their houses, socially isolated, and without sunshine, so on, that may weaken bones, etc. This is a really important thing. It's more important than perhaps other people who might be able to drive to a different park and exercise somewhere else. And I also think that generally you'll see people enjoying physical fitness and going for walks across the park. Now, the disadvantages of an off-leash Woodford Park is, of course, the possibility of dogs disrupting sports and affecting people using the park. Now, I understand the philosophy set out in the paper attached to the meeting is that off-leash dog owners will only, of course, operate when they responsibly can control dogs off-leash. But the nature of dogs and sports being played and balls being kicked around and the people running around the park is a temptation for dogs. And I think it's natural and really a bit unfair for dogs to expect them to totally stay within the immediate remit of their owners and not possibly take advantage of the breadth and the space of Woodford Park to run. And I think in that context, it's very important that people playing those sports and enjoying the activities just get a fair chance to enjoy them and to really not be kind of off-put if some owner or dog runs across immediately in the middle of the playing. Secondly, of course, Woodford Park is a great park, but it's surrounded by busy streets such as Linwood Avenue, motor vehicles, buses, and if there's any dashing out by dogs from there, it could cause traffic problems. Also, there's other issues relevant to the council's cost for council, really, future work, is the possibility of sprinkler turf repairs being needed where dogs have been digging up, possibly owners not cleaning up after dogs, particularly if the dogs run very fast to the other side of the oval and the owners have to run to catch up with them. That may require more costs for the council to use more rangers, gardeners, to keep the eye on the place, make sure that holes that have been dug have been filled in, etc. This is also a potential legal liability issue for the council because unless the council has relevant dog owners, could surveilled and really make sure that there's no, say, holes in the ground where they're playing sport, there's legal liability issues if someone playing sport was to, say, break their ankle, which could happen when they're running across the playground area. And I think these are just important cost issues for the council just to be aware of for future planning. Now, in conclusion, I generally just want to support the fact that Woodford Park has been there for a very long time. I've lived there for a very long time. And community activities, community people living locally as well as nearby can visit. The elderly, the frail, the vulnerable, disabled, children, families feel safe to just walk across, play, sit down, have a rest, sit on the park, go for a bit of exercise. And that all works together with the current on-leash dogs who are working quite happily in that context with no real problems. The issue purely is that off-leash will affect the possibility of future community use and enjoyment of the park. And I just want to kind of put a personal plea here that I think in a way Woodford Park is quite an idyllic park in the sense that there's a sense of community, because it's away from main highways and so on, a sense of community. Different types of people can enjoy it, whether they're frail or old, whether they're disabled, or whether they're young and hearty and want to kick a ball. It brings everyone together, and in that context, currently it works quite well, and dog owners and dogs on leashes. And as such, I think when you consider the nature of the park, if you were to visit it on a Saturday, Sunday afternoon, and you were to look to the people walking down the street with their dogs on their leashes, walking happily over to the park, if you were to listen and look and to listen at children laughing and playing and families enjoying themselves, listen to the cheers and the happiness of people playing sport. And it's a very idyllic, really, afternoon kind of occasion to look at that and to listen. And even something as simple as the Mr. Whippy van going around and basically the kids running up and getting ice cream from Mr. Whippy. It's that type of sense of peace, of access, free access by community members to something which is of their right, the chance to live and work and be on that park and enjoy themselves. Bearing in mind that if you are a dog owner who wishes to be off-leash, it's a matter of literally walking to the right and just crossing that magic point where Woodford Park meets Queensville Park. And then as you walk over, you can then put your dog off-leash. So it's not a long walk. It's something that you have free choice if you're a dog owner and you wish your dog to be off-leash. There's no restrictions there. But Woodford Park in itself is a contained park, I think, of great benefit to the community. I think the council have done a great job over the years in maintaining it and really creating an environment that is of benefit and shows how people enjoy it. And I think I would just urge the council to not accept this proposal and to basically not consider the possibility of ever making Woodford Park a dog on leash exercise area. I just feel this just not really reconcilable, the nature of Woodford Park. and instead something like Queensville Park is the appropriate place, and that's immediately accessible to everyone who wants to use the dog and let the dog loose off leash. So there are my proposals, just some comments on the various issues raised in that basically part 3, which is really subject to part 2, of course. And it's merely just that, although it may seem technically possible to just change part 2 when you make Bannister Creek, for example, if you propose making it, say, on leash or off leash, you change that, then it's subject to that to go to part 3. Here's Woodford Park is another example. We can just move the status of off leash to Woodford Park.
I'll just have to ask you to wind up there, please.
Yeah,
if you
so all
don't
I'm saying is that,
Yeah.
although that may seem quickly to be an immediate answer, I just feel in light of the proximity of Queensville Avenue and the community, it's not appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming this evening. I appreciate it. We do have one final deputation here, and that deputation has been approved by the city, and it is for, sorry, I've just lost my page here. I'm coming to it any moment. Fiona, I've got Coble-Neal. Is that true? Fiona, are you here? Hello, Fiona, how are you? Please come forward. You're also here to talk about Bannister Park, report IE 004 of 25, which also concerns outcomes in relation to dog ownership and dogs on lead and off lead, and a number of recommendations. Just introduce yourself to the council and please make a start.
Good evening, Mayor Hall and councillors, and thank you for having me back. I was here last week. I've just got, so last week I asked a question about what would happen if there be any proposed changes to Bannister Creek Park area for off-lead dog walking. And I read today in the report that the Mayor just mentioned then, that, and I actually read and I realised, oh, Bannister Creek's going to be made an on-lead park from Iveston Road to Metcalfe, which is what's called north of Iveston Road, whereas the other side of the park, going south, I guess, won't be on lead. I'd like to speak to the idea that there doesn't seem to be any need for the park area to be on lead around Bannister Creek at all, because it hasn't been declared a TEC, a threatened ecological area. It's also, I understand, hasn't had a lot of complaints or dog issues or negative interactions with people. And I understand it's also very well fenced by the Bannister Creek group that have done work there for many, many years. It's well fenced to prevent dogs from entering the creek, causing damage, causing any mischief. And also the idea that it hasn't caused any issues, so why should it become off leash now? And as we've heard from other people who want to make or keep parks off leash, in Linwood, there are less places for dogs and owners to walk and to exercise. And I really would like the council, to consider this tonight when you debate, or whenever you debate this issue, that Bannister Creek, as far as I know, to sum everything up, has not caused issues in terms of dog-human interaction with the environment. It's not an area of threatened ecological, it is significant obviously, but it's being well cared for by the Bannister Creek group, and that it should remain, the whole of it, particularly north of Iveston Road to Metcalfe, should remain off leash, please, for the enjoyment of all dog owners and, of course, dogs and many other people who enjoy walking with dogs and being along there. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you for coming down. Appreciate it. Thank you. That's the end of the deputations for this evening. Thank you. We move on to item 9, which is applications for leave of absence. None have been received. Item 10, questions by members of which due notice has been given. We do have a question from the Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor, I might get you to read that out, but just in relation to that, councillors, in accordance with clause 4.11 in brackets 3 of the standing orders, been no discussion at all in relation to the question itself or the answer provided. So, Deputy Mayor, if you'd like to read your question, I'll certainly get the answer read out to you.
No problem, Mr Mayor. I'll put the both questions together if I may. Can the City please provide residents and elected members with an update on the progress of NOM 00924 abandoned shopping trolleys? And have any commitments been made by the shopping centres to address issues caused by retailers' trolleys being dumped in the City of Canning suburbs? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Fisher.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, following Council endorsing the notice of motion abandoning shopping trolleys from Councillor Bain and Councillor Page, the City wrote to all shopping centres mentioned in the motion, requesting a meeting to discuss the continuing use of abandoned trolleys and containment measures. The shopping centres contacted by the City have included Westfield Carousel, Bunnings Cannington, Linwood Shopping Centre, Bentley Plaza, Livingston Shopping Centre, Riverton Forum and Southlands Boulevard. To date, the City have met with 4 of those shopping centres, including Westfield Carousel, Bentley Plaza, Southlands Boulevard and Linwood Shopping Centre. The measures being undertaken by the shopping centres that the City has met with includes working with store owners to collect trolleys in a more proactive way, introducing trolley management plans and various management actions such as trolley GPS trackers and setting trolley collection KPIs with retailers. Although the majority of retailers had concerns about large-scale containment measures, they were happy to look at strategies which educate shoppers and improve trolley collection, including partnering with the City on a joint marketing campaign. Although this is an interim response, we are intending to meet with the remaining shopping centres and provide a briefing to Council.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That will be published in the minutes of this meeting. Thank you. Item 11, items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery. There are none. Reports of committee meetings at 12.1. The report of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 6th of March 2025. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 4 of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? I'm happy to move that from the chair. A seconder? Councillor Parkinson, thank you. I have nothing to add. I support the officer's recommendation. Councillor Parkinson?
Nothing further to add.
Thank you. And in the absence of any questions from the floor, I shall put the matter to the vote. Thank you, Council.
The motion from the recommendations from the Art Committee has been carried unanimously with all 7 in favour.
Thank you. We move to item 13. Item 13.1, the responsible officer is the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Michael Littleton. The first of those reports is OC 004 of 25. The title of the report being Recommendations and Motions from the Annual General Meeting of Electors. The officer's recommendation is on page 13 of the agenda and is also on screen. As requested in the agenda briefing, and I agreed to the matter, the 4 separate parts of the motion will be voted on individually following the close of debate. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Kunza, thank you. Seconder for the matter is our Deputy Mayor. Councillor Kunza, I understand that you've got an amendment you'd like to put. Would you like to start?
Yes, Mayor Hall, I'd like to move an amendment as has been circulated to elected members with respect to item 1, or part 1 of the item, sorry.
I'll just get that up on screen in a moment, if you just give us just a moment. I understand you've been working with governance and it provides greater clarity around that item. Councillor, I'll get you to speak to that if you don't mind.
Yes, Mayor Hall and councillors. Look, I would like for your support of this amendment. I believe that the members of the community who raised this issue wanted the actual the site to be protected, and whilst we do have a number of strategies looking at this site, nothing's been implemented as to date. In my mind, you can do all the strategic investigations you like, but there's really only one option for the site going forward. And I believe it needs to be formally protected and rezoned environmental conservation. I however, acknowledge that we need to go through a process and understand all the facts, and which is why I'm happy to move this amendment as put. Look, when Canning first put the draft local biodiversity strategy out for public consultation back in 2017, as I mentioned last week, the recommendation specifically in relation to this site was to seek to protect at least 6 hectares.
Can I just hold you up just for a moment, Councillor? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I omitted to get a seconder for your amendment. Councillor Bain was a seconder for the motion. Councillor Bain is a seconder for the amendment. Sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
Thank you. The original recommendation for the site was to seek to protect at least 6 hectares in one consolidated block following confirmation of biodiversity values by adequate flora and fauna surveys. It goes on, in the future, form a reserve with conservation purpose and reserve it in the local planning scheme to afford long-term protection. Now, for whatever reason, I'm just making the assumption here, my question last week regarding this hasn't been answered as to why the recommendation was changed. And I'm assuming the city's commercial team got involved and it was changed to develop a strategic plan for the mixed business zone. The local biodiversity strategy, which would have cost the city tens of thousands of dollars to produce, went at length detailing the environmental devastation that has occurred since European settlement, and then went on to state what needs to occur to protect what we have. When Councillor Page asked last week how much has been cleared since European settlement, we knew the answer because we have an entire document looking at it in detail. The impact of polyphagous shothole borer has quite rightly been raised over the past 2 years as a grave environmental threat, impacting potentially thousands of trees across the city of Canning. Mayor Hall has been quoted in the media many times, holding the state government to account for its lack of action, and has called it the biggest environmental disaster in the state's history. But with respect, that's not the greatest environmental disaster in the state's history. The devastation across southwestern Australia caused by land clearing is by far the greatest environmental disaster this state's ever seen. When you're on the Swan Coastal Plain, it's mostly been cleared for housing. In the Perth Hills, it's mostly been cleared for mining. And in the wheat belt, it's been cleared for agriculture. The ongoing land clearing is the biggest environmental disaster that has caused many species to go extinct and many more likely become extinct. Now, I don't know why local biodiversity strategy recommendation was changed because the entire document speaks to why we need to protect this site. Even more disappointing, 2 years later, the land utilisation plan was put to council and recommended disposing, rationalise, develop or lease this land. And the city's looked for uses for this site. And the greatest disappointment was that this land was never used as an environmental offset for the Thornley-Coburn line. Now, many of you may not have been here at the time, but a number of years ago, council considered an omnibus planning item, came to council regarding many land parcels across the city, and one related to a site in Welshpool, which the state government wanted to rezone as general industry so that the state government could sell the land and use those funds to help fund the Thornley-Coburn line. It was the then council that said, can we instead ask the state government to use the land as an environmental offset for the Thornley-Coburn line, which subsequently happened, and today that land remains a protected area in a concrete jungle. If only the land utilisation plan had thought of the same for this site, it was an optimal opportunity to receive some sort of financial compensation whilst protecting the land, which the city's own strategies previously said needed to do. Now, as part of this recommendation that's put forward, the amendment, I hope there's opportunities to secure environmental offsets as a mechanism to optimise the conservation value of the balance of the Lot 351 Bannister Road. I truly do. This site represents 8 hectares out of 116 hectares that the city owns in Canning Vale alone, freehold land. The city has a significant portfolio with respect to land holdings and opportunities going forward. We have land holdings that are worth potentially a lot of money if we develop them, including sites as Rossmoyne Park and Adenia Park in Riverton. They're worth considerable amounts of money if we develop them, but we don't because they're environmentally and socially important, and no council would dream of doing anything with those sites. This site contains some of the last remaining Banksia woodland left within the City of Canning, and I don't expect any City of Canning local government that professes to care about the environment to ever clear this land. And so I fully expect us to go through a process, but it's my firm belief and hope that we never develop this site and that we find good outcomes with respect to using the site as an environmental offset in the future. And that's why I hope that you support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kunze. Deputy Mayor, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor. So this amendment is much clearer about the purpose of the review. It also sets out the parameters of the review and the terms of reference. We now know what is going to be assessed and considered. Importantly, it is consistent with our local biodiversity strategy and land utilisation plan. It makes the remarkable remnant bushland at 351 the focus of the review. I'm pleased to see the protection of this bushland will be afforded priority status and referenced as a TEC in the review as its significance demands. I thank the City for taking into consideration people's concerns about the intention of the review and for putting together the alternative recommendation, which I will be supporting tonight. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Page.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Mr Mayor, is that I do appreciate the time the city has taken to listen to the community members and working with the council members as well. I think that this amendment to the recommendation more fully reflects the intent of the motion brought at the annual general electors meeting. So yeah, I do really appreciate it and I'm in support of it.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Councillors, I think we might just put that to the vote in the absence of anyone speaking against it. Councillor Kunze, we won't debate it any further. We shall put that to the vote. We're just voting on the amendment at the moment, everyone. Thank you.
The amendment to OC 00425 has been carried unanimously with all 7 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. So the amendment to item 1 has been carried. That now becomes a substandard motion. It was originally moved by councillor Kunze and the original motion, in proper was moved by councillor Kunze and also seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor, I understand you have another amendment you'd like to put.
Yes, please, Mr Mayor. I believe governance has it at hand. It regards part 4 of the recommendation.
Councillor, I'll just get you to, Deputy Mayor, I'll just get you to check that that is the amendment you're speaking of. I'll just read through it and make sure it's correct.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, and I'll just ask for a seconder for the amendment, please. Councillor Page, thank you. Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak just to your amendment please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I do support Part A of the officer's recommendation and the development of an event parking guidelines. While the guidelines are a great initiative and will work to improve particularly on-site parking, I believe that more can be done to address the issue of unsafe parking in local streets, which was a chief concern and desire of Mr Beecroft. I went to Civic Gardens on a Saturday night last year while an event was on at the request of Mr Beecroft, and the parking situation there was unacceptably dangerous. Vehicles were parked all over the median strips and the footpath, and I don't know how a fire engine would have driven down Civic Gardens if they needed to. I struggled to navigate my sedan through the maze of parked cars. I also received complaints from local residents regarding a parking at a Civic Gardens event in January, which they described as chaotic and dangerous. The creation of the event parking guidelines is a great first step, but Mr Beecroft and myself believe there is more that needs to be done. Hence why I'm putting forward this amendment for Council's consideration, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Page, have you got anything further you'd like to add?
Nothing further to add. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, anyone wish to speak against the amendment? We'll just put the amendment to the vote then. Thank you.
The second amendment to motion OC 00425 has been carried unanimously with all 7 in favour.
Thank you. The amendment by the Deputy Mayor has been carried by Council, now forms part of the substantive motion. As I said previously, Councillor Kunze was the mover of the substantive motion. Deputy Mayor Bain was the seconder. We've had discussion already in great detail in relation to the matter. Councillor Kunze, do you feel you have anything more to add? Councillor Kunze is shaking his head as a negative. Councillors, unless anybody wishes to actually speak against the item, we may just put that item to the vote. Deputy Mayor.
Mr Mayor, just for your consideration, would you consider a minor amendment or for number 3, Part B, to include Wilson, the suburb of Wilson? So the Neighbourhood Watch Committee meeting is focusing currently on Bentley and St James. Would you consider a minor amendment to include Wilson? I know a lot of Wilson residents would like to attend that meeting.
Confirms the support for the Canning Neighbourhood Watch Committee, specifically volunteers around to hold a community safety forum focusing on service. CEO, do you see any issue with including Wilson in there? I will take that as a minor amendment. I don't see any issue with that. Councillors, we'll simply add in item 3B, after Bentley and St James, we will add the suburb of Wilson.
I just think it's done now.
Councillors, I'm just going to ask a quick question. Earlier on, I mentioned that we would vote on each of these matters separately. With only 7 of us in the room, I don't think there's any great debate about what's actually happening. Is there still a need to vote separately on each one of these, considering what the amendments have actually achieved tonight? I don't feel that there is. That being the case, we will put the item to the vote as one item. Councillors, thank you. We'll put the matter to vote. Thank you, Governance.
Substantive motion is amended for OC 00425 has been carried unanimously with all 7 in favour.
Thank you. We move to item 13.2. Ms Lorraine Driscoll, the Director of Corporate and Commercial, is the responsible officer for this report. It's CC 004 of 25, the title of the report being Monthly Financial Report for January 2025. The officer's recommendation is on screen. I'm happy to move that from the floor. The recommendation is on page 24. Can I have a seconder, please, for that item? Councillor Kunza, thank you. Council, I support the officer's recommendation. I have no further questions. Councillor Kunza?
Nothing to add.
Councillors, anyone wish to speak either in favour or against it? Thank you. We shall put it to the vote. Just waiting for one more.
Motion CC 00425 has been carried unanimously with all 7 in favour.
Thank you. We move to CC 005 of 25, the title of the report, Budget Review, as at the 31st of January 2025. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 66 of tonight's agenda. Councillors, you'll note that an absolute majority is required for this item. Because of the numbers here in the room, an absolute majority means that we will need 6 elected members to agree for this matter to be carried. That will actually carry for all other matters tonight that require an absolute majority. So we need 6 in favour or the matter will not be carried. Councillors, can I ask for a mover, please, for that item? Deputy Mayor, thank you. A seconder. Councillor Shen, second. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Second.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against? Thank you, councillors. We shall put this matter to the vote.
Motion CC 00525 has been carried by absolute majority with all 7 in favour.
Thank you. The next item is 13.3. Mr Graham Bride, the Director of Planning and Development, is the responsible officer. It's PD 002 of 25. The title of the report being Consideration of Road Names for New Roads Associated with the Castledare Local Structure Plan in Wilson. The officer's recommendation is on screen. Thank you, Governance. It also appears on page 86 of the agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Page, thank you. Deputy Mayor as a seconder. Councillor Page, you'd be happy to be living in Betsy Street?
Absolutely. I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I also support the officer's recommendation and do like the nod to the history of the area. Thank you.
Yes, nice, isn't it? Nice touch. Thank you, councillors. Anyone wish to speak against? No, thank you. We shall put the item to the vote. Just waiting for one more.
Motion PD 00225 has been carried unanimously with all 7 in favour.
Thank you. The next item is PD 003 of 25. The report title is Financial Incentives to Protect Significant Trees, the Outcomes of Investigation of a Former Notice of Motion. The officers do have a recommendation that will require a councillor to move it with a recommendation for item 1. Can I have a mover? That would be Councillor Kunza. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor.
My intention is to move option 5.
Option 5. Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? It'd be Councillor Page. Thank you. Councillor Kunza.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. So option 5 is to provide an annual fixed payment for every year the significant tree is retained. Now, my initial desire in raising this concept was to provide a rate reduction to those who successfully place their significant tree on our register and afford it with a level of formal protection. However, staff have advised that it's too onerous to do that, and so, but even though this is a payment to the prospective person or landowner, I'd still like you to think of it that way. By giving an annual payment, we are effectively allowing them to retain some of their own rates in order to achieve a positive environmental outcome. Now, providing an annual payment, as well as checking on the tree and agreeing to do the occasional maintenance, is in my mind the best option, as an annual payment will ensure the landowner continues to see the benefit that they are receiving rather than forgetting about that one-off payment they received some years ago. Now, much of the discussion surrounding this concept has been about subdivisions and the clearing of trees to enable infill. It's absorbed much of the attention, but this is more than that. Governance, are you able to put the photo up? On the screen, you'll see the other one, sorry. So on this screen, you'll see a mature eucalypt that until very recently stood in Willerton. I won't say where exactly it is, because my intention is not to shame anyone, but this was planted, this eucalypt, in the 1970s and stood about a metre or two in from the verge property line. Staff assessed its likely value at around $25,000, but they never assessed it formally as it wasn't on public land. The day after we were briefed by staff at our strategic briefing on this, so 3 weeks ago, I drove past the significant tree as it was getting cut down. Are you able to flip to the next one, please? This is not for subdivision or development, but because as I understand it was a large tree outside the front of the house. It's in an R20 zone. The tree was cut down for no other reason than it existed. Shouldn't we have a means to try and prevent this, offering maintenance and a small yearly payment towards offsetting someone's rates? As I said in the other item, land clearing is causing environmental destruction across southwestern Australia. And here in Canning, what's the logic in spending millions of dollars planting trees to replace what we expect to lose on private land whilst doing very little to protect those private trees? The state government is doing basically nothing, but we have an instrument and it's worth pursuing. I'll make the point that the cost of this initiative is probably less than what we'll lose in the dead plantings that we do every year, the trees that don't succeed, that we invest into, that we water, but don't make it. Now, I've heard some concerns raised with this proposal over time, and I just want to respond to some of them. The fact that this doesn't guarantee the protection of the tree. Placing the tree on the significant tree register provides a much higher form of protection, as a development application needs to be lodged to remove it from the register. Council will be able to decide. Yes, it's a decision appealable to SAT, but there's nothing that we do as a local government that isn't appealable to an external body, whether it be SAT, the Ombudsman, the Public Sector Commission, the Joint Standing Committee on Delegated Legislation. It goes on. There's always an oversight body, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. If we took that philosophical position, we may as well shut the door and go home. I've heard it stated that we shouldn't pay money for something on private property, but council is already in the space. A few years ago, council decided to increase everyone's security levy to spend $100,000 a year, giving out money as part of the security incentive scheme. Every single year, the city posts the mayor with a handful of 50s, giving it to an elderly couple who will be spending it on a security item. Now, we spend $100,000 a year investing to things on private property. That $100,000 in 1 year would cover 500 significant trees at a $200 a year rate. That would be a phenomenal outcome. It's also been mentioned that the tree might die. Trees are living organisms, and yes, they die, but they might live for another 100 years if they don't get knocked over. There's no way we'll ever know. But that's no different to the security infrastructure that we invest into. Many of it breaks quickly, but that doesn't stop us investing into it. There's actually a ratepayer sitting in the gallery who, when I raised this with him, mentioned to me that he utilised the security incentive scheme and his cameras broke within a year or two, and he had to go buy some new ones. It doesn't mean that we don't stop investing into that concept. Now, whilst I've heard a few concerns in the past, I really hope council supports this concept. We need a mechanism to try and protect what we have. We owe it to try, and I really hope that it succeeds. There's a number of local governments looking at this sort of initiative now, including Stirling, and this would be City of Canning leading the way, and I hope it gets your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Page.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also would like to point out I am in favour of this. With this recommendation, it does come with an implementation plan, so we could always trial it, run it as a pilot for a few years and see what the impact is. But I definitely think we need to be a little bit more bold. We have one of the worst tree canopies in Western Australia as a city. We need to be starting to think outside the box a little bit and to push the envelope a little bit about what we can do to try and encourage private landowners to retain significant trees. This isn't going to be available to every single tree on every single property. We're talking about those big, beautiful, significant trees that really add to the amenity of our area, that add food and shelter for our local fauna, that help keep our urban heat island density, trying to lower that. So I do think we need to trial something new, and if we do a trial and it is unsuccessful, we'll learn from that. So I do support this option 5. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I'm going to say a few words, and I hope to sway Councillor Page and others to my point of view. Can I ask why your hand is raised?
I was just wondering, am I allowed to make a comment or not?
No, you're not able to make a comment, sorry. Councillors, I'll be speaking against the recommendation, and I'll actually be proposing under section 9.17 of the standing orders, I'll be foreshadowing an alternative motion, and that will be for council to consider 7. And I'll ask governance to put the alternate motion quickly up on the screen so councillors can just have, I can't speak to it at the moment, but I'll ask councillors just to have a look at what that would entail. Councillors, I'll speak against the item as it's been put. I disagree totally on a number of levels in relation to what has been said. I think it's really true to start that in respect to this item, none of us here, not one of us here, believes that doing nothing is an option. I think all of us wants to do something, but doing nothing is not an option. We recognise that the City of Canning has a role to play in increasing canopy cover. However, we need to think carefully about our decision this evening, because our decision is not only about trees, it's about financial management, and it's about our responsibility as elected members to manage the financial resources of this city. For the best part of 10 years, I've heard that councils should stay out of areas which are the responsibility of state government. Councillor Kunza just raised it a moment ago, and we should focus on the remit of local government. But just in relation to the scheme he spoke about a moment ago, in relation to the security incentive scheme, the difference between the two schemes is that the security incentive scheme actually applies equally to every resident. Everybody is treated fairly and equally, and every resident across the city can apply for that funding. This is very different. Those people that happen by luck or fortune to live in an area where they are on a large block of land generally with maybe a small house, and some of those people will be on properties that may be worth an awful lot of money in places like Rossmoyne, will be the beneficiaries of what could be hundreds of dollars every year, a minimum of 200, but obviously if they have more than 2 trees or 4 trees or 5 trees that they place on the register, they will receive a significant rebate, as Councillor Kunza put it, against their rates. That was the intention. We have people battling to pay their rates, young families in areas that I live in Wilson, in Bentley, St James. Those are areas that have already been hit by urban infill. They don't have the ability to actually come to the council and actually have a significant rebate. This item is not means tested. It means that somebody living in a $3 million home in Rossmoyne is just able to apply for this rebate as somebody living in Bentley on a small block. And I don't think that that's either fair or equitable. And so it doesn't apply fairly across the board to every person. And I have a real problem with that, because we know that our council, our city, is a city of two sides. There are people that are struggling to put food on the table that would benefit from a significant rebate every year on their rates, but we don't provide it. So the difference between the scheme that Councillor Kunza raised and this one was that the state government has failed to act on the security incentive scheme. I've met with Bill Johnston, the former member, many times and raised this with him. In fact, the city council actually asked me to do so. We tried to get them to actually put funding into that and they refused. The difference with this is, if you actually look at the report at paragraphs 28 and 29, which are on page, I don't have the page here, the paragraphs 28 and 29 indicate that for once the state government has actually listened to the local government sector, and they have actually now invested and committed to actually increasing canopy. So whilst the City of Canning is, for some reason, looking tonight to get involved in the private property domain and try and impose its will or provide rebates to private property owners, we have already had the state Labor government as recently as March, so that's this month, make a commitment to plant 1 million trees across the Perth metropolitan area and a commitment to double Perth's tree canopy by 2025. And in relation directly to this motion, which talks about private property rebates, the state government has made a fully funded commitment which would allow 10,000 households per year to receive $150 to plant a native tree on private property. So they are already in this space. Why would we then step into this space? The reason why I believe they've stepped into the space, because we didn't. Local government hasn't. The only examples that you have on the table that appears in the report tonight is of the City of Bayswater and the City of Vincent that have a similar incentive package that has failed miserably. The City of Bayswater has incentives, hasn't had a single person put their hand up to actually register a tree on that register. And just on that, councillors, I've got 20 seconds to go before I hit 5 minutes, and I'd like to speak a little bit longer. So I'm going to ask council to please provide me with a few more minutes to speak, and I'd ask to put that motion to council that under the standing orders I extend my time to speak by a few short minutes. Governors, I might just ask for councillors to raise their hands. If that's too hard, councillors, can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in favour of me just speaking for another minute or two? Thank you very much on that. So the option is not to do nothing. But funnily enough, we know, because we were briefed on that in the last little while, we've actually had 4 separate residents from 4 separate private properties have stepped forward without any incentives being offered to them and have applied to have trees on their private property registered for our significant tree register. That's without us doing anything. So my belief, and that's why I put up the alternative motion tonight, is the option of doing nothing is not something that we should consider, but what we should be doing is funding a awareness campaign. If we've had 4 people come forward without any awareness being provided, and I've had conversations with councillors that actually raised this themselves, and that's not included in option 5 here. So if we had an awareness campaign that was funded, if we actually increased the free tree giveaway and funded at least doubling the number of trees that we give away every year, If we actually do things that are actually tangible and responsible and make a concerted effort as a council to annually around an important and significant national day of environment or around National Tree Day, if we time that event for that, my firm belief is that we will see significant benefit. The obverse is to do what the City of Bayswater has done and just go down a path where we actually hand out rebates, and they have had not one single person take them up. We need to do better than that. We heard about being bold and doing things differently. This is something different, isn't it? And again, when Councillor Page spoke about trialling it for a time, well, I think maybe the sensible thing to do, the most pragmatic thing as a council, is to not do nothing, but to do something and trial it. If after 12 months or 24 months of increasing the number of trees that we give away around our awareness campaign, around a social media campaign across the city every year, if we have no response to that, well, then maybe we come back to these rebates that are proven at the moment to not work. And we haven't had a single example yet put to us of rebates that actually work. So shortly you'll hear Councillor Kunza rebut what I've actually said, encourage you to support option 5. But for those councillors, even Councillor Page that spoke in favour of it, I think there's another option tonight. And I think a pragmatic council would look at all of its options before blindly going down the path of supporting a notion that is not fair for all residents. It's not equitable for people out there. The headline will be that we end up handing out large rebates to people that probably don't financially need them in areas where people are incredibly fortunate to live, whereas the battlers on the other side of Canning are going to continue to battle, and I don't think that's fair. So I'd ask you tonight, despite what you've already perhaps said, to consider supporting the alternative motion, and then perhaps in 18 months or 2 years' time we come back and review how that has actually worked. Thank you, Council. Does anyone wish to speak on the item? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Kunza, I may just ask you to close debate then.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Look, personally, I'm a bit disappointed. I've listened to your commentary over the last few years with regard to polyphagous shotwell borer, and Mr. Johnston quoted you before about needing to do everything to do to protect the tree canopy we have left. So it's disappointing to hear your position on this one.
Under the standing orders, can I make a personal statement just in relation to your disappointment? So under the standing orders, I'm able to make a personal statement. I will just in response to that, because I don't think it's fair.
Mayor Hall, can you please clarify where in the standing orders you're...
Governance, can you just grab the standing orders, and I'll just... personal statements are covered by... Personal explanations are on page 17. It's 7.16 or 7.15 of the standing orders of the City of Canning. In relation to that, firstly, I'm disappointed that you would say that you're disappointed in me, because I don't think it's warranted. My own environmental opinions and advocacy have been well documented tonight, firstly by Mr. Johnston, who went out of his way to highlight my strong stance in relation to a number of things I've said publicly, and then last week by Sharon Mawson, who sits at the back here, who highlighted more than a number of items that I've actually supported over time and things that I have said in relation to this. And earlier tonight, in relation to your very clever and well-supported amendment to environmental amendment in relation to protecting Lot 351 Bannister Road in Canning Vale, I wholeheartedly gave my support to that and voted in favour to it. So that is my personal explanation, and I wish you wouldn't express your disappointment in point of view that is valid. But please continue.
That's strange. With respect to some of the points you've made, with respect to fairness, there are many grants provided by the City of Canning that aren't equal to everyone. The young high flyers grant, I can't apply for that. I don't qualify for it. Should we get rid of that grant? We have grants that are specifically related to people living with disability. We have grants that are related to our multicultural groups. We give grants to groups for events that aren't even in the City of Canning, and we talk about financial prudence. We have verge grants, so anyone can apply for, we're trialling a pilot program for native gardens on the verge. we have the SIS. Now, is that open to everyone? The ironic thing about you utilising Rossmoyne for an example is that if you actually look at the suburbs of the people applying for the SIS program, they're not coming from St James, they're not coming from Cannington, they're not coming from Queen's Park, because those people, the battlers of Canning I assume you're referring to, can't afford it. It's the people that are in more in higher socioeconomic suburbs that are actually applying for the grant. How is that a reason or an argument not to support this? The City of Bayswater, Mr Mayor, with respect to you utilising that as an example, provided rebates for maintenance of the tree, which was subsequent to the maintenance. So you had to apply for a grant. It was up to 5 years just to provide some sort of maintenance of the tree. It wasn't a financial incentive in terms of a grant to actually try to get someone onto it. If you saw yourself applying to put a tree onto a, as we covered in the SIB, onto a significant tree register, to go through a bureaucratic program to get a rebate to do some maintenance on a tree to protect it, I don't think anyone would actually apply for that. You need to give them a financial incentive to actually want to go onto the program. I'm sure Mr Williams will talk to you about the extent in which the city's environment team has tried to promote the significant tree register and has got nowhere until this came up, where a number of local residents actually sought to put their tree on the significant tree register. It might not be doing nothing, but it's a continued business as usual to do number 7. It's not going to attract more people. You made the comment about us being not in that space and that the state government is giving 1 million trees or something along those lines. That's identical to our tree giveaway. You said we weren't in this space, but that's actually replicating what we do. And now you're wanting to increase it, even though the state government is proposing to give away 1 million free trees. And what's the point? As I pointed on that, if these trees are being cleared for no other reason other than they exist. The amount of money that I'm actually asking for council to put forward here is very minimal compared to the amount we invest into our urban forest strategy, and every year we invest. And to see things like that happen for no reason other than they didn't want to look after the tree, it's devastating. And I ask council to support this. It's worth a shot. We can't be continuing doing business as usual as the Mayor proposes.
Thank you, Councillor Kunza. We will put the item to the vote. If it's not supported, the alternate motion will be moved. Thank you, councillors. Please vote on the item.
Motion PD 00325 has been carried with 6 in favour, with Mayor Hall voting against the motion.
Thank you. We move on to item 13.4. Mr Warren Bowe, the Director of Infrastructure and Environment, is the responsible officer. It's IE 002 of 25, outcome of community consultation for on-leash proposal at Riverton Park, Riverton. And as I said earlier, councillors, the item requires an absolute majority. Can I have a mover, please, for the item? I'll move it from the floor. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Kunza. Thank you. I support the officer's recommendation in relation to this matter. Councillor Kunza.
I support the officer recommendation and acknowledge that there's some residents will be disappointed with respect to the outcome. However, what's clear is nothing brings out the community more than talking about dogs and footpaths. But I think it's actually an example of why the city needs to look at ways to properly fund investing into dog parks, so that as we're going through building them, we can actually make decisions with respect to putting on lead areas and providing potentially prohibitive areas. But I think they need to work in tandem, because you need to offer something. People are used to what they have, and making changes to on-off lead areas, we need to be able to do that in a delicate and thought out way, and we need to look at ways to fund the dog spaces strategy in order to achieve that, especially with the items that have a significant environmental criteria associated with the decisions. Thanks.
Thank you. We move to, we'll put the item to the vote. Thank you.
Motion IE 00225 has been carried by absolute majority with all 7 in favour.
Thank you, Council. The next item is IE 003. Similarly, it's the outcome of community consultation on on-leash proposal for Sandra Park in Rossmoyne. Again, an absolute majority of council is required tonight, which would be 6 members. Can I have a mover, please, for the item, which also appears on page 124 of tonight's agenda? A mover, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. I'll second it from the chair. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
I too support the officer's recommendation. I have nothing further to add. Anyone wish to speak on the item before we put it to the vote? Thank you. We'll put the item to the vote.
Motion IE 00325 has been carried by absolute majority with all 7 in favour.
Thank you. Again, an absolute majority is required for IE 004 of 25. The title of that report being Outcome of Community Consultation On-leash Proposal at 8 Conservation Parks, in brackets Ferndale, Linwood, Willerton and Wilson. The recommendation is on page 137 of tonight's agenda and is on screen. Can I have a mover, please? That would be the Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bain. Seconder? Councillor Page, thank you. Councillor Bain, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be speaking tonight against the officer's recommendation. I have significant concerns and reservations about the proposed changes for both Bannister Creek and Woodford Parks in Linwood and do not support these parts of the recommendation. The Bannister Creek Catchment Group, the group that created the reserve and have the greatest interest in its protection, advised me that they have never seen a dog in the fenced-off conservation area or a dog disturbing wildlife. They see no reason for changing the status of the northern section of the park. Another resident, a dog owner who's lived at opposite Bannister Creek Park for 30 plus years, told me that they have never seen an issue. Ms Coble-Neal also put forward a number of legitimate reasons tonight in her deputation not to change the status of Bannister Creek Park. The survey feedback was evenly divided. There was no overwhelming argument for a change. The issues raised are similar to those at the other parks which the city decided to keep off-leash. It's unclear why this park is different. Given that the responses were relatively even, the case for change was based on there being a TEC in the park and that dogs needed to be on leash in the northern section to protect it. The question then is raised, what about the TEC and the playground in the southern section where dogs are still allowed off leash? The Bannister Creek Catchment Group, who know the bushland the best, say there is no TEC in the area, and at last week at the AB, the city confirmed that there have been no surveys or assessments undertaken to confirm the presence of a TEC. The creek and bushland is also protected by fencing and very thick vegetation. It will be very difficult for any dog to get past through that and get into the conservation area. I also don't believe that Woodford Park is a good alternative. As Ms Horgan noted in her deputation, any proposed change to the status of Woodford Park, which is a much-loved recreation and sporting area, would be extremely problematic and cause unnecessary concern in the local community. So given that, Mr Mayor, in line with section 9.17, I'd like to foreshadow an alternative motion. I believe governance has that at hand. It's just simply to take out sections 2 and 3 from the recommendation.
Governance, do you have a copy of the alternative motion?
We don't have a copy, it's just simply that, as I said, removing parts 2 and 3.
2 and 3 were removed, 4 becomes 2, 5 becomes 3.
And that would be the echo that you can hear here mumbling in my ear would be, CEO? Thank you. Would be the proposal would be then to remove the alternative motion would be to remove 2 and 3, and then obviously 4, 5, and 6 move up and take those numbers. So that'll be item 4 will be 2, 5 will be 3, and so on and so forth. Deputy Mayor, is that the proposal? He can still vote against it. Yeah. Deputy Mayor, so you're moving the motion, but obviously speaking against it. You already said that on the public record. The alternate motion is there, and you've given reasons for you voting against it. Do you have anything further to add before I go to Councillor Page?
Not much more to add, Mr Mayor, only that Council give consideration to that alternative motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Page, the Deputy Mayor has moved an alternate motion. You have actually seconded for the substantive motion. Can I ask you, do you wish to speak at this stage or enter into debate?
No, thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Anyone wish to speak on this matter before we put it to the vote? There is an alternate motion that's been put by the Deputy Mayor. None. Deputy Mayor, we will put the item to the vote. There'll be no further debate on it. If the item fails to reach an absolute majority, we will then move to the alternate motion. Councillors, let's vote on the item. No, we don't vote on the foreshadowed motion. We vote on the substantive motion, and if the substantive motion fails to reach an absolute majority, then we will. Would you like to vote again? You haven't put your vote in? We're still waiting for somebody to vote. I only have 6 votes counted. Governance, in relation to the item tonight, we have not reached an absolute majority, which would be required to pass the item. I can't hear you.
Let me just announce that IE 00425, the motion has been lost. 2 in favour, with councillors Rodriguez, Page, Secon, the Deputy Mayor and the Mayor all voting against the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. And that being the case, we will then propose the alternate motion, which has been introduced by the Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor, I'll just ask you to have a look at it. Governance will put it up on screen shortly. We'll just amend what we have up there. If you just give us a moment to catch up. Yes, a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, you're putting it. Councillor Page, thank you, will be the seconder. Deputy Mayor, I've got the CEO tapping me on the shoulder. Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you very much, CEO. As rightly pointed out by the CEO, Councillor, I'll remind you that we will require an absolute majority to pass this alternate motion. If we don't reach that, the motion fails.
Sorry, I just want to point out in section 3, it's talked about the outcome of part 4 above, so that will also need to be adjusted.
Yes, so the subject to the outcome of part 4, which will now be part 2, I believe, is that right? Good pick up, Councillor Page. Thank you, that's been changed. Deputy Mayor, you anything you wish to say?
I don't propose to say too much, Mr Mayor, other than thanking my colleagues for their support of this motion. I do support, and also the residents that came in tonight and provided their deputations. I do support the recommendation as it stands currently. I think it's a very worthwhile exercise going to public consultation for Centenary Park West. But also looking at and investigating the possibility of an off-leash dedicated area at Ferndale Park. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I hope that this new motion will receive council support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Page.
I support this new recommendation. Thank you.
Councillors, I too support the alternative recommendation, which is now a substantive motion before us. As rightly pointed out by the Deputy Mayor, there are a number of real positives here for the community, which is fabulous. But also there's been an awful lot of conjecture, both on social media and here in the chamber. People have written to us and spoken to us about their issues with the officer's recommendation. And that's not a criticism of the officer's recommendation. They do their very best to make some sort of balanced recommendation out of the consultation that we have, which is often limited, despite there being a considerable number of people on this occasion actually contributing. So I do support the officer's recommendation, and again say we need an absolute majority for this matter to pass. Yes, Councillor Kunza.
Just a question. Through you to Director Bowe, given that the previous item 2 related to a park that was specifically asked for as part of the previous motion, and to report back to council, and part 4 actually specifically states the parks that won't be changed. Is it an administrative thing to actually state the parks that aren't changing, or is there anything official under the Dog Act that you actually have to state the outcome?
Director?
Because obviously that park is no longer commented on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know the answer to that question in relation to the Dog Act and whether it's required to restate or ensure that the parks remain unchanged. I might defer to Mr.
For the sake of clarity, but it's probably a good idea to do so, even though there might not be a requirement. It makes it crystal clear what's actually remaining the same. Do you think that's the premise behind the city's? Yes. He does? I'm not sure we'll be able to give you a positive, definitive answer on that one.
So should that reference to that part of Bannister Park be included within point 4, that it remain unchanged?
The new point 4? What Councillor Kunza is suggesting is that previously there was going to be a change to Bannister Creek in Linwood, and that Bannister Creek should now be perhaps added to those parks, will remain unchanged. Councillor Deputy Mayor, that would need a minor amendment. It's a very minor amendment.
Not a problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Page, you happy with that as a minor amendment? We'll add that to it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kunza, for raising that. So we will add Bannister Creek Park in Linwood to item 4, the 4th part. I'll just wait for that to be corrected on the screen. All set? Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor, you happy with that at the moment, the way it reads? Deputy Mayor, that would be you?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Happy with that? Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. In the absence of anyone else wishing to speak on the item, I might just propose to put it to the vote. Thank you, councillors.
Foreshadowed motion IE 00425 has been carried by absolute majority with all 7 in favour.
Thank you. The next item is IE 005 of 25. The title of the report being Linwood Senior High School Pedestrian Safety and Parking Review. I do have an amendment I want to put for this one, but can I have somebody move it from the floor? Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Page. Councillor Page, I saw you first. I'm sorry, I'll go with Councillor Page. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation and the proposed safety treatments and improvements, which will make the roads not only safer for children and pedestrians around Linwood High, but also the vehicles using the high road network. As a matter of interest, I read the full road safety inspection report, which found that there were 312 reported crashes on High Road in the last 5 years. The auditors concluded that this number of crashes was too high and recommended a number of changes to High Road, including a reduction in the speed limit. the safety and security of our community, whether they are in their cars or walking or crossing our streets, is of the utmost importance to me. So I'll be heeding the advice of the experts and supporting all the recommended changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Page, anything to add?
I also support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillors, I fully support, almost fully support the recommendation. In fact, the recommendation falls out of work done by a number of councillors previously, and I was included in that in relation to the issues we had around Willerton High School when we had a young student there knocked over and seriously injured a little while ago, a couple of years ago. That prompted this review, which has been a good thing. I do have an amendment I wanted to make, but first I wanted to just ask of the relevant director, just in relation to item 6, part 6, it says, request the Chief Executive Officer to seek grant funding for upgrades to the High Road and Metcalfe Road intersection once further analysis is completed. And I just wanted to know, analysis of what and by whom, and quite frankly, what's that about? I mean, I can't remember a motion coming to council asking us to review that intersection separately.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It did fall out of the road safety inspection, and we did briefly touch on it at the SIB, but I might ask Mr. Gibson to give us some further detail about what those investigations might and analysis might entail.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Can you provide some clarity around that? It's just a little bit obscure.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The main concern here is we've got a few options to consider, but we need to do traffic modelling to satisfy main roads considerations for any traffic signal changes. So we need to do that modelling before we can confirm what the viable options are and what main roads do support in terms of the changes there.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I'm just going to, councillors, with your indulgence, I'm going to put an amendment just in relation to item 3 there. The amendment would be that instead of saying right to the Commissioner of Main Roads to implement a speed limit reduction, that we request the Chief Executive Officer to undertake public consultation to consider the implementation of a speed limit reduction. And if I can get a seconder for that, I will speak to it. Governance, did you want me just to read that out to you? So 3 will be amended to read, delete right to the Commissioner of Main Roads WA to implement. So delete those words. And we will then have undertakes public consultation to consider the implementation of, and then the rest of that paragraph, which is a speed limit reduction on high road, etc., from 70 to 60.
Sorry, you've got to put the Chief Executive Officer stuff at the beginning of that sentence.
I just need you to direct your queries through the chair, councillor, and not go off on a tangent and just start speaking. What was your query, sorry? No, it's all good. It's already at the top. So everything under that requests the CEO to do the following, and that would be to undertake that. Yep, that's okay. Councillor Kunze has seconded the amendment, so I'll just speak to that. We had someone tonight come to us to talk about a number of ideas in relation to High Road. And one of those was to talk about a 40 speed limit along where Coles was that I'm not sure I certainly entertain. But we have actually, as a council over time, Varland Avenue was one of them. A number of times we've looked at reducing speed limits, but this is such a big issue. We're talking about reducing a speed limit for a road that has actually held that limit for more than half a century and connects 2 very important arterial roads and one a major highway, and reducing it without any public consultation. I've seen on social media, I've been written to by a number of people, there's been extraordinary amount of very negative social media around the city's proposal to change this, and I'm certain there are people that would support it. But I think that we owe it to our community before we make a wholesale change permanently to a major road that dissects so many people in the community and a number of different suburbs. It starts pretty much at Shelley, works its way through Riverton, Willerton, Parkwood, Linwood, and beyond. I think we owe it to people to at least open that up before we start writing to the relevant commissioner, that we go to the community and just ask for their opinion whether or not they would support us doing so. I don't think that that would be an unreasonable thing to request. That's all I asked. It was just that we seek consultation on that before we bring it back to a decision of this council. Councillor Kunza.
Thank you, Mayor Hall, for your amendment. I fully support it. I was actually coming here tonight in support of most of the parts of the officer recommendation, which relates to improving safety and around Linwood Senior High School and addressing the issues that Councillor Rodriguez and former Councillor Spencer-Teo raised many months ago, especially with respect to where students are walking to and from Linwood High School and the infrastructure provided and where it is. I too have an issue with this point, number 3. I feel like it's been put into there. It doesn't actually specifically relate to the issues that we're talking about. Most of the data provided show crashes that aren't actually, whilst they're adjacent to High Road, half of them are in Metcalfe and PDOs as cars are stopping and starting there. And the majority of people coming to and from Linwood Senior High School actually coming whilst the speed limits are 40 k's an hour, which I appreciate why the city's looking at extending some of those areas. But High Road itself, not that long ago, main roads wouldn't entertain a change in speed limit on High Road. They always stated that they look at the road network from a strategic point of view, and as an extremely important strategic road, they wouldn't want to reduce the speed limit on High Road, and I understand that has since changed. But the argument here is not that 60 is safe. If High Road was 80 kilometres an hour, the recommendation would be to reduce it to 70. It's just reducing it. And if the number of crossovers and that on High Road is such an issue, why is development continuously approved? 10 years ago when High Road Hotel was knocked down and a Coles was proposed, many people in the community jumped up and down and said that the impact is going to be enormous. The number of vehicles going in and out of High Road, it's going to be just unbelievable. And of course, there was a traffic impact statement that supported the development. It said nothing to see here. And then a number of years later, we're looking at reducing the speed limit along High Road because of the number of crashes. Who's ultimately responsible for that? I don't know, but the easy answer is to reduce the speed limit. And I guess when these proposals are put up forward, traffic impact statements should be held accountable at some point later down the track, because I don't see why the wider community should be, I guess, impacted. And that's why I think that I support Mayor Hall with respect to actually asking the community. I don't know how that's going to be done. I don't know if it's going to actually come back to council or not, this item, subsequent to the public consultation. However, yeah, I don't support reducing the speed limit on High Road through this motion, which to my mind the data doesn't align. Yes, there's crashes further down High Road. Should it be reduced in other spots? I'm not sure, but I'm not sure why it's linked to Linwood Senior High School.
Thank you, Councillor Kunza. We're just speaking about the amendment at the moment, just asked for community consultation. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment before I put the amendment to the vote? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Just a question in reference to paragraph 26. It says all proposed road safety improvements will undergo community consultation prior to implementation. I'm just wondering how this amendment is different from what the officer is proposing at paragraph 26.
I think because at the moment it asks us to write directly to the Commissioner of Main Roads before that occurs. I think the consultation occurs after we've already written requesting. Can I just ask Warren the Director to clarify that?
Yes, that's correct, Mr Mayor. We'd expect the consultation to be undertaken by Main Roads in the event that they progress the proposed speed reduction. My understanding that the amendment here seeks the city to undertake consultation before a decision or a further engagement with Main Roads is undertaken.
So just to clarify that, basically tonight we will have made a decision of this council that we will write, and that our decision will be to write to him to implement a speed limit reduction. That's the decision of council tonight as it stands, and then the consultation would occur once we've actually written to the commissioner. We're just kind of doing the consultation first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I appreciate that, and thanks for the explanation. Just the concern for me is that is this, that is the proposed speed limit reduction, going to come to council for consideration, or are we making a decision right now that if this amendment is successful, then there is going to be no reduction in the speed limit? When will council make a decision on this matter?
Well, that would be us too. We could arrive at a date. I didn't think it was really necessary. Can I just ask for your advice there, either from the CEO or from the Director, in relation to the consultation, how long that might take? Obviously, this matter would need to come back before the council. How do you see that playing out? And I apologise for the lack of notice before the meeting.
That's fine, Mr. Mayor. We would, undertake concerted consultation over a period of months with the community and refer the outcomes back through a strategic issues briefing and seek a direction, albeit not a decision, from council as to how they wish to progress.
Thank you. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Just another question, Mr. Mayor. So during that, or with that public consultation, residents will be privy to the findings of the road safety audit and its recommendation that the speed limit be reduced. Is that correct?
Mr. Bowe.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, but I probably just can't answer that question at the moment. Deputy Mayor, we would provide the public with what we would think is all the relevant information to enable them to provide feedback on the consultation. We haven't given it much consideration, to be honest, but if that's the council's wish, then that is certainly some information, or at least some summary information that we could include in the engagement.
You put on the public record tonight, if you think that that would be worth doing, pointing them to that information, well, then that should form part of the consultation, and it's on the public record tonight that you've asked for that to occur. So Director Bowe is feverishly making notes beside me. Councillor Page.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask, would there be a consideration, instead of having an amendment, having a minor amendment, writing to the Commissioner of Main Roads to consider implementation of a speed limit reduction, instead of consulting, then writing a letter, and then another layer of consulting? It does seem a little bit doubling up. Would you consider that as a minor amendment instead?
I wouldn't take that as a minor amendment. That would have to be another amendment, but I wouldn't have thought that that would be a course of conduct that the Commissioner of Main Roads or Council is writing to him saying, would you please think about... Director, are you able to actually provide some context? You know about these things more than I do. What would be your response to Councillor Page's question?
The response would be dependent on the council resolution, Mr. Mayor, and maybe it's best for the amendment to be considered, which may give direction as to how we'd go.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Page. Councillor Secon, yes.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. I just have two questions. My first question is, how do we foresee the consultation taking place? Is it through letters or is it like a notice in the newspaper? And my second one is, has there been similar consultations for the reduction on Willery and Wallen in the past?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in relation to the latter part of Councillor Secon's question, the consultation was undertaken by Main Roads in that instance. And we would consider our standard means of communication and engagement with the community to try and ascertain their views on the proposal.
Thank you. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I'll support the amendment on the condition, and we just previously discussed that residents are given a full report, considering that there were 312 crashes there in 5 years, 41 medical, 15 hospital, and a fatal crash. So I'm hoping, and I'd really like to see this data communicated to residents so they can make an informed decision. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's on the public record. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't propose to speak any further on the item. Councillors, just put the amendment to the vote. Oh, Councillor Rodriguez, you had a question? Just your microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a minor correction there. It's not undertakes, it's undertake.
Hang on, what have we got? What's up there? Undertakes. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillors, let's put the amendment to the vote, and then we'll come back to the substantive motion.
Amendment to IE 00525 has been carried unanimously with all 7 in favour.
Thank you. The matter has been carried. We'll move on to item 7.5. Mr. Gary Fisher. Oh, hang on a second. Let's go back to the substantive motion. Sorry, the substantive motion now includes the amendment at point 3. I have the Deputy Mayor who actually put the motion. Councillor Page actually seconded. Both of those councillors have spoken to it. I put an amendment which has been adopted. Is there any further discussion needed on the item before we put it to the vote? Thank you, councillors. Let's put it to the vote.
Substantive motion is amended for IE 00525 has been carried with all 7 in favour.
Thank you. At item 7.5, there are no reports from the Directorate of Mr. Gary Fisher. At item 14, motions of which previous notice has been given. There is a motion here put by Councillor Secon and Councillor Kunza. They've submitted the following notice of motion. It's notice of motion 001 of 25, safety concerns at children's crossings. The notice of motion is now on the screen. It appears at page 225 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please? Oh, sorry, I've got Councillor Secon. Would you like to move it? Councillor Kunza, you'll be the seconder. Councillor Secon.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. I do want to let you know I have quite a bit to say, so I hope I can wrap it up in 5 minutes. And I have your patience.
So. I certainly hope so.
Mayor, fellow councillors and member of the public, I'm here today to speak on an issue of great concern to our community, the critical shortage of traffic wardens at Children's Crossing, particularly at Riverton Primary School's crossing on Wallen Avenue. For months, parents, school leaders and students have raised serious safety concerns about this dual carriageway crossing. Without traffic wardens, children are left to navigate 4 lanes of traffic, including a turning lane during peak hours. The risks are clear, and we cannot afford to wait for a tragedy before action is taken. Parents have shared alarming experiences, near misses, confusion among drivers, and an increasing reluctance to let children walk or cycle to school due to safety fears. Sophia, one of Riverton Primary School student, has been walking and biking to school for years, but she has always felt nervous when no crossing guard is available. Her father, Mr. Shivers Lindsay, shared his frustration that the new lights are not being obeyed by drivers and the kids are sometimes left waiting for a long time for drivers to notice and actually stop. Manish Menon, another Year 5 student, told us that he and his friends often have to wave at cars to stop. But because drivers don't stop at the same time, crossing remains very dangerous and they're often confused. Another parent, Tim Williams, described how traffic wardens themselves feel unsafe covering both sides of Wallen Avenue alone. If adults are concerned for their safety, how can we expect young children to manage on their own? This isn't just a Riverton issue, it's a systemic problem across Western Australia. The state currently has a shortage of 82 traffic wardens, leaving many school crossings unmanned. The Western Australian Local Government Association, WALGA, has identified safer school crossings as a key priority for 2025, calling for the conversion of high-risk crossings into signalised pedestrian crossings. This is a great long-term solution, but we need an immediate fix now. We cannot wait years for infrastructure upgrades while our children face daily dangers on their way to school. In addition, another major issue raised by neighbouring schools is the lack of replacement wardens when a crossing guard goes on sick leave or annual leave. Unlike other essential roles, there is no pool of relief wardens to ensure coverage. As a result, crossings are often left unmanned for days or even weeks, creating uncertainty for families and increasing risk for children. The City of Canning has invested in flashing wigwag lights at crossings, but as we've heard from parents like Shiva's, these lights are being ignored by drivers. The investment is wasted if no one is there to enforce pedestrian safety. We need a solution now, and that starts with ensuring traffic wardens are available and adequately supported. The role of a crossing guard is crucial, yet recruitment challenges persist due to low pay, casual contracts, split shifts, and lengthy hiring processes. That is why I put forward this notice of motion tonight alongside Councillor Kunza to acknowledge the long-standing safety concerns at school crossings across our city, including Wallen Avenue and Corinthian Road, and request the CEO to write to WA Police and the relevant WA government representatives advocating for increased investment in children's crossing units to improve recruitment and remuneration of traffic wardens. Just a little bit more to go. In addition to increasing investment, we also need a review of how existing traffic wardens are allocated. Some schools currently have more than 2 crossing guards, while dangerous crossings like Wallen Avenue remain unmanned. The reallocation of resources to high-risk locations must be considered as part of the immediate solution. Furthermore, we need to ensure there is a pool of relief wardens available to cover crossings when permanent wardens are on leave. In concluding, our community is speaking loud and clear. Our children's safety is not negotiable. While long-term solutions such as signalised crossings are necessary, we need an immediate response to the current crisis. We must do everything we can to ensure safe crossings, not just in Riverton, but across the City of Canning and beyond. I urge my fellow councillors to support this motion and stand with our families in demanding this urgent action. Thank you.
You've come home with 15 seconds to spare. You've done very well. Thank you very much, Councillor Sekon. Councillor Kunza.
Well done, Councillor Sekon. Look, I most definitely support the notice of motion. Parents need certainty. They need to know that in high-risk places like Varland Avenue that there'll be a traffic warden there helping guide their kids across the road. It took a number of years to get main roads and that to do the works on the wigwag lights. It's incredibly disappointing that we're now in this situation where it's provided a bit of double uncertainty as the parents and that think that the wigwag lights are there to stop traffic, but they're not. It's a shame that we didn't put a signalised pedestrian crossing there because now we're in a situation where there's no traffic warden guiding the kids across. And it's been well over 10 years since this situation started becoming prevalent across Perth, where traffic wardens weren't available. Councillor Sekon mentioned the issue where traffic wardens were sick and were unavailable and no one being there. Miss Adams, who was here earlier, 6 or 7 years ago, she gave 6 months' notice that she was going on leave, and they didn't start looking for someone until about a week or two before, because that's their process. And then Metcalfe Road was unmanned. There's systemic issues that have been prevalent for quite some time. More and more parents will be driving their kids to school, which exacerbates the issues that we have. The City of Canning have so many schools that have many students, more than what the schools were built for. And then with everyone driving there, their kids, it becomes the safety and congestion issues around the school become even worse. And then we as a local government are trying to work out how to incentivise people to walk or cycle, and we build the infrastructure. But if I was living west of Varland Avenue, I wouldn't be sending my kid across that crossing. Councillor Sekon and I met with some parents last week, and we were just standing there watching it, and it was scary. There was one Willerton Senior High School student who walked across, and the car heading southbound, the right lane, stopped for her. But then car by car by car in the left lane just kept driving through. And if she was younger, she might have actually started walking across, thinking, oh, this car stopped for me, and then got cleaned up. It's extremely scary. And it's something the state government needs to invest into. I mean, being a traffic warden is a unique job. You have to be there in the morning and the evening, late afternoon. And how they attract them, I'm not sure, but what they've been doing hasn't been working because the number of crossings are just becoming unmanned. And we've talked about Varland Avenue here because it's extremely scary. But there's a number of cross Canning and something needs to change. And so we call upon the state government to do something. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to speak in favour of the notice of motion. Strongly, I think it's a terrific notice of motion. And we all know that there is a significant problem. And I think perhaps subsequent state governments have really dropped the ball around funding for these crossing guards. What we don't want is parents jumping into crossings, trying to control traffic, out of urgency and a sense that somebody needs to do something, and teachers certainly can't fill that void, but I'm sure at times they try to. It's up to the state government to provide this. And you look at the work that the City of Canning and this council are doing around our review of safety around high schools and primary schools, and the work we put into the last motion around Linwood High School. What's the point of any of that if we can't find anybody to even man the crossing? That is the primary point of safety for children crossing the road, to be escorted safely by an adult. And that's a basic function that should be provided by state government. And it's really disappointing to me that they've allowed the funding to slip, and they haven't reviewed, the wages paid to these people to try to incentivise or encourage more people to get involved. Just something I wanted to raise was just in relation to part 2. It says to request the CEO to write to the WA Police and relevant WA government representative. I'm of the opinion that should be me writing, not the CEO. I should write on behalf of the council, but that's neither here nor there. I just think that we should be a little bit more selective with who we're writing to. To write to WA Police without naming who we're writing to would be writing to Shane Mallon for more funding for more rangers. That's not who we should be going to. There's a Minister for Police and there's a Commissioner of Police. There's a Commissioner for Road Safety, and I think there's a Minister for Education. So perhaps I think we should be a little bit clearer about who we should be writing to, because there are specific senior members of Cabinet that should be held to account, and we should write to those people first in relation to that. So I'm not certain if I need to amend it, but I'm not certain that writing to the WA Police and relevant WA government representatives is really clear enough or targeted enough. I think in the first instance we probably need to write to the Minister for Police and the Minister for Education, and CC in the Road Safety Commissioner, and even the Premier of the state, Roger Cook, should be appraised of this. We're at a level as a council, big local government, we can write directly to the Premier of the state and ask him to make change. I mean, he's the guy that holds the purse strings. He runs the cabinet. All those people sit underneath him. So I just wondered whether councillors, there might be an opportunity just to kind of provide some clarity around who writes and who writes to who. Councillor Kunzel.
Sounded like you're about to propose an amendment.
I'm happy to propose an amendment just in relation to that, but I won't if you don't think it's required. I just think it needs to be a little bit more specific and target some of these entities.
All right. Are you going to accept that as a minor amendment, Mr. Mayor?
I can accept it as a minor amendment, and I'm happy to read out the list of people that should be considered by the city. As I said, I think it's a fine motion, but I would just like to see that we write a pointed communication to a number of high-ranking officials that are more responsible than others.
Yes. Change as accordingly.
It would be to the Premier of the state, Roger Cook.
So request the Mayor to write.
Sorry?
You want request the Mayor to write?
Well, I think so. I'll leave that to council to consider that. I don't think it's an operational matter. I think council has put a notice of motion today to write to somebody. If going to write to ministers in relation to this matter, my own opinion, and it's nothing to do with ego, it's about protocol, would be it should probably be the Mayor to write on behalf of his own council. And I would say that the Mayor should write to the Premier, Roger Cook, the Minister for Police, and the Cabinet was only released today, so I don't know who these people are at the moment, Minister for Education, and to CC the Road Safety Commissioner and the Minister for the Commissioner of Police. I just think it's such an important nom. I think you've both done very well with it. We should go straight to the top and, demand some answers on behalf of not only our community, but all communities.
Mayor Hall, may I say that I agree with your targeted and specific request to write to the specific ministers and Premier. We've had many members of our community who have written directly to the Children's Crossing Unit, and they've just been told that, you know, it is what it is and they're under-resourced and they're just not able to attract traffic wardens. So I think going up to the higher authority might help in that sense.
Can't hurt, I don't think. Councillor Kunza, you okay with that? Thank you. Look, I'll just, we've only added a couple of entities there, so I might just take that as a minor amendment. I'm finished speaking. Thank you, councillors. Anyone else wish to speak in support or against the nomination, notice of motion by Councillor Secon and Councillor Kunza? Thank you. We'll put the item to the vote.
Nom 001-25 has been carried unanimously with all 7 in favour.
Thank you, councillors, for putting that motion. At item 15, urgent business, there is none tonight. At item 16, confidential matters, similarly, there are none. And at item 17, closure, there being no further business tonight, I now declare the ordinary council meeting for March 2025 closed, the time being 8:25 p.m. I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance and good night.